Good evening, my friends. Let me begin by saying what an honor it is to be acknowledged by the legendary Moshe Hellman. On a night when everyone is a star, Moshe is truly a supernova. Some 44 years ago, 1970, the nation's economy had hit bottom, just as Ohel was beginning its work as a foster care agency. Over decades of boom and bust, this endeavor of caring and compassion blossomed into one of the finest, most inspiring human service organizations in this city, if not the nation. This is due in no small part to the leadership and to the vision of Moshe Hellman, as well as Mel Zachter, David Mandel, and the Ohel leadership team. Yes. And of course, it is due to the enormous generosity of our Jewish community and to the support of government at every level. As you know, I'm a longtime supporter and fan of this amazing agency. I'm delighted to be with you tonight. Thank you all for being here to celebrate and to support Ohel Children and Family Services. Before I introduce our featured speaker, one of the best in the business, let me take a moment to recognize our guests of honor, my friends, Chani and Jay Kestenbaum, and the good people of Investors Bank, represented here this evening by Chief Operating Officer Dominic Kama. As a golfer, you know, one of those people who shouts 4, scores 6, and writes down 5, let me express my appreciation to the chairs of the Ohel Omni Golf Classic. Let me also commend our Camp Kaylee All-Stars, Nina Bernheim and Malky Rubin. I have a strong affection for Camp Kaylee. It is a wonderful place full of hope and joy, and everyone who works there deserves our praise, especially its major benefactors who made the camp possible, Harvey and Gloria Kaylee. And as I always do, I must pay respects to the unsung heroes of Ohel, the teachers and the trainers, the caregivers, and the therapists who work with such care to help our children, adults, and families overcome the barriers that stand between them and the happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives they could and should be leading. Our gratitude to them. As you may know, over the years, many prominent elected leaders have come to this dinner, addressed our community, and by coincidence have seen their stars rise to greater heights. I'm not going to list them all, but I will point out that on February 21st of 2010, the bright, young, nationally celebrated Attorney General of this state, a leader by the name of Andrew Cuomo, spoke at this very dinner. Today, coincidentally, he is now Governor Andrew Cuomo. He is with us again tonight, and I'll let your imaginations do the rest. In all seriousness, I have known the governor for a long time. It was clear to me when I met him, as it is clear to me now, that Andrew Cuomo is the kind of idealistic, innovative, results-oriented leader we need in government today. Long before his election as the chief executive of the Empire State, Andrew Cuomo had built an extraordinary record of human service as the founder of Help USA and as the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development under President Bill Clinton. As I have already mentioned, he was an exceptional Attorney General, and I was proud to work with him to advance a number of critical issues, not the least of which involve protecting our children from online predators. Since becoming governor, Andrew Cuomo has been unrelenting in his quest to deliver government that is smarter, more efficient, and more effective than ever before. As his partner in Albany, I think he's accomplished more than anyone could have thought possible. What has impressed me most, what has touched so many lives, is the leadership our governor has shown in helping our storm-battered communities recover from Superstorm Sandy, a tragedy, I might add, that Ohel took on with great vigor and compassion. Thanks to the leadership of Governor Andrew Cuomo and to his commitment to partnership and compromise, we've advanced a massive agenda that will strengthen our economy and make New York a better place to live, to work, and to raise a family. Unquestionably, he is the finest, most effective governor in America today. At a time when the far right in Washington has stymied progress, crippled government, and bled hope out of the American people, we are showing that government is listening, that government is working, is getting things done, is taking on the big challenges, and is delivering for hardworking families from Brooklyn to Buffalo. In a state that is incredibly diverse in so many ways, Andrew Cuomo has proven himself to be a governor for all seasons, for every challenge, and for all New Yorkers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the governor of the great state of New York, my friend, the Honorable Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you very much.
Allow me to present this token of our appreciation at Ohel to Governor Andrew Cuomo. Outstanding leadership at Ohel. We see the star in everyone. Ohel Children's Home and Family Services, November 24th, 2013.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, and good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for that beautiful award. And it is very true. Seen the star in everyone. And I want to begin by thanking Speaker Sheldon Silver for his very kind introduction. It's been my pleasure to work with the Speaker over the past 3 years that I've been governor, but worked with him as Attorney General and obviously been following his career for a very long time. He has been an extraordinary public servant and a champion of progressive government for many, many years, who's made things happen, who's gotten results, and who has never forgotten people who are disadvantaged and who need special assistance and special care. And his voice has always been there for the voiceless. Over these past 3 years, while you've seen governments gridlocked around the country, you haven't seen that in the state of New York. We're making government work. We balanced the last 3 budgets in a row, which is the first time in 40 years, believe it or not. We're getting laws passed. We're moving the state forward. We're making the state the progressive capital that it was Once again, we passed some laws that we're very proud of on a national level, marriage equality and common sense gun control that other states need to follow our lead on. But the Speaker has been more than kind to me over these past 3 years. A little bit, I'm still the rookie in the room because I've only been there a short period of time. But on a personal level, he's been very kind to me. We have more work to do. We still have more work to do to clean up Albany, and we're going to do that together. But the arrows are pointed in the right direction. And Ohel could not have a better friend or a better supporter. Let's give him another round of applause, Speaker Sheldon Silver. I want to congratulate the Ohel officials on tonight and the honorees, Rabbi Cohen and Marvin Hellman and Mel Zachter and David Mandel. Let's give them a round of applause for their great leadership. I want to applaud the Kayleys for what they do on Camp Kaylee, which is an extraordinary place, and thank you for helping people. And to Miriam Lubling, who Rabbi Shearer calls the angel of mercy. She's an inspiration to all of us. Pleasure to be with her, Miriam Lubling. Ohel truly does have a magnificent mission. It's about helping the less fortunate. It's about providing foster care, domestic abuse services, residential facilities. Over 450 people served by Ohel. That's in addition to what they do at Camp Kaylee, teaching children of all abilities the important principles of inclusion and of tolerance. They're doing God's work, and they're doing it very well. It's a very tough job. Many of the staff are here tonight. Let's give them all a round of applause and thank them for what they do. Ohel's mission of caring for all members of the community is also in many ways a New York tradition. Governor Franklin Delano Roosevelt later became president, obviously, suffered from polio. And Eleanor Roosevelt said that the polio affliction totally changed Franklin Roosevelt, and that he became much more empathetic and much more compassionate to others. He became a champion for the disabled, but it also changed his entire perspective. And when he was governor of the state of New York, he put in place, in effect, the first safety net that we have. It was FDR who said, government has a responsibility for those who can't provide for themselves. We take it for granted today, but it was FDR who said society has that obligation, and the vehicle for actualization of that responsibility is government. So housing assistance programs, programs for the disabled, income subsidies, that was all done under FDR. He then became president, and he brought that safety net to the nation. And that's how many of these programs were first established from the state of New York. We also birthed here in New York the first disabled advocacy community and first campaign. In an interesting story, 1935, Sylvia Bashoff was a 21-year-old Jewish girl on the Lower East Side who had had polio as a child and was partially paralyzed. She worked very hard. She went to a very sophisticated business school called Drake Business School, and she was graduated at the top of her class, and she had great secretarial skills, but still she couldn't get a job. She applied to the WPA. She was inspired by FDR, went to the WPA for a job, and was turned down by the WPA because she was physically handicapped. And on the top of her application was stamped PH with a rubber stamp for physically handicapped. Well, Sylvia came back and put together a group of other young people who were physically handicapped, as they called it at that time, and they called themselves the League of the Physically Handicapped. And they protested and picketed that they couldn't work for the WPA just because they were physically handicapped. They had seen what FDR did. They saw what he did as governor with handicaps, went to the White House. They went to Washington to picket on a flatbed truck. And Sylvia and Lower East Side youth who had physical disabilities, and some from Brooklyn. I understand she needed to get the muscle from Brooklyn, I think. They went down to Washington. They went into the WPA headquarters. They sat down, and they said, we're not going to move. It was the first sit-in that was ever done. FDR heard about this. FDR sent over a message that applauded them for their activism and said that he would do away with the PH designation. Sylvia was hired. No longer were people turned out of employment because of PH. That denomination was not even allowed to be used on paper anymore. And that shows how activism can make a difference. Sylvia Bashoff, Lower East Side, Brooklyn, 21 years old. That's a beautiful story, and that's a New York story. The Speaker and I take that legacy of government activism very seriously. And to put it simply, we have done more and better for people with special needs in this state as a government than has ever been done before, period. And we are proud of that record. We have put in place what we call the Olmstead Plan, which is a plan that is dedicated to making sure that every individual gets community-based services to the best of our ability to provide them, and moves us away from institutionalized services. This is the first state to step up with the most aggressive mandate on private insurers that they cover autism as a covered service in their plans. Autism is increasing, it's growing, it's frightening, and the private insurers should pay for it. And we just established something that I'm very proud of that we call the Justice Center. And this is a serious problem which isn't spoken about that often. The state obviously has hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities in its care. And we've had a number of complaints over the years of abuse of people who are in our care, abuse of disabled people who are in our care, and sometimes serious accusations of neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And these are very difficult cases for law enforcement to handle because they pose challenges. The complainant, the victim can have a disability. The witnesses can have disabilities. So from a prosecutorial point of view, it's a very difficult case. And many of the prosecutors in the state just didn't want to handle them. So you would have these complaints and nothing would happen because the case would be too complicated for a district attorney or a United States attorney. What we've done in setting up the Justice Center is we put in place our own center of lawyers and investigators that if there is a complaint against abuse of a disabled person in our care, we have our own investigations unit, our own prosecution unit called the Justice Center. It's been in existence for 5 months. In 5 months, it's received 31,000 calls. And in 5 months, we believe we have 400 cases of possible criminal activity, just to give you a sense of how pervasive a problem this was and how important the Justice Center is. We're now going to be providing a service where we're going to train people across the country in how to put together just this type of unit to make sure every disabled person in our care is getting the best care they can and certainly is not a victim of any type of abuse. And if they are, it'll be found out and it will be punished, period. New York has always been, first and foremost, to step up against injustices or any forms of discrimination. But just as a reminder of how we have to be constantly on our guard and vigilant, there was a story in the newspaper just last week that alerted me of a situation that I hadn't had any knowledge of. It was in the New York Times, and it was a story on a school district called the Pine Bush School District in the state of New York. Pine Bush School District is a public elementary school 90 miles outside of New York City. And parents of children in the Pine Bush School District have filed a federal case saying that their children were subjected to pervasive anti-Semitism for a prolonged period of time, and the school officials did nothing. Now, this is not Alabama, this is not Georgia, this is not some state down south. This is the great state of New York we're talking about. And a public elementary school system where children in the school, Jewish children, were pelted with coins and were made fun of, where they were harassed with talk of the Holocaust, a school where they drew swastikas all over the school, on the bus, on kids' books, where a swastika was drawn on the face of President Barack Obama on a school poster in a classroom. And the teachers were told and were still left there for a month. And the parents complained to the hierarchy in the school, and the superintendent said, and I quote to one of the parents, "Well, an expectation of changing inbred prejudice may be a bit unrealistic." That was the superintendent's response. Let me read that once more. "The expectation of changing inbred prejudice may be a bit unrealistic." And what I say to that is this, as governor of the state of New York. No, it's not unrealistic. This state has a zero-tolerance policy for anti-Semitism, period. It will not be tolerated anywhere, anytime, in any manner, shape, or form. And it is up to each and every one of us to remain vigilant, to fight for these principles, because literally, right here in the great state of New York, we still have our work to do. In closing, my friend, these principles, FDR's principle of compassion, Sylvia Bashoff's principle of activism, Ohel's principle of service, they require an affirmative obligation of us. They also speak to some of the most essential teachings in Judaism, the concept of tzedakah, justice, but more than justice, social justice, justice in the social interrelations and how we treat one another. The teaching of tikkun olam, reach out, heal the divide. That is, each and every one of us has a responsibility and affirmative obligation to do that. It is also our duty as a citizen of the great state of New York, if we were founded on one premise, is that we accept all, we judge none, and we discriminate against none. This is a state that was built on the principle of inclusion and tolerance. That was the whole founding premise, that we will invite people from all across the globe to our great state of New York, and we will forge one community from those people. And that one community will be connected, and will be interconnected and interrelated, and we will share benefits, and we will share our burdens. That is the New York story. That is the laboratory of the American experiment of democracy. It works here because we make it work. And each and every one of you stood up for those principles when you came out and supported Ohel tonight and attended this dinner. It was my honor to be here, and I thank you very much.